Some of you, the Japhetite, Gentile, Eurocentric Caucasian, since my last message have shown your displeasure in the image I have brought forth of you and your fathers. The image alluding to the destruction that is awaiting you in the near future. Not knowing a man, I can only measure him by his deeds and the effect of his presence on any environment he comes in contact with, and what is left behind when he leaves. The Lord's law of rhythm teaches us, the student, that in a time of blessing or sunlight, when a man or woman is living deliciously on the upswing, be sure to put something away for the rainy, thunderous days of the backswing not far behind. When you were living in your blessing, how was your mercy and charity towards your neighbors, your brothers and sisters? Did you love them as you loved yourselves? Did you do unto them as you would have them do unto you? If your answer to the two questions is yes, then you have no worry at all. But if the answer is no, take heed to my message. Now look at the history of your fathers. Do you think the karmic loop stops at your feet? We, the seed of our fathers, paid for their transgressions of law, but you ignorantly seem to think universal law escapes you. We all have to attest for our sins and the sins of our fathers. In the end, we all face the right arm of justice when we deviate from the laws of the Most High God. Not the wicked, corrupted justice system you created today and call law, but the right arm of justice, Geburah, the office of Sabaoth, vengeance, Thoth, the Lord of Sabaoth. Apocalypse of Abraham 17 and 13. I am called according to my deeds. When I wage war against the wicked, I am called Sabaoth. Sabaoth, the energy or the essence of the Lord when justice or vengeance is delivered. The essence that manifests or is transferred into a physical emissary, a servant on this planet, in this case a nation or nations, that will do the will of justice. In this case, Gog and Magog are the ones chosen in the time of Exodus. Sabaoth, Romans 9 and 29, as Elijah said before, except the Lord of Sabaoth had left us a seed, we had been as Sodoma and had been made like unto Gomorrah. If the destruction of the Lord of Sabaoth did not leave a seed, everything and everyone would have been destroyed, like Sodom and Gomorrah. This is the judgment awaiting America and the Gentile. Sabaoth, the Lord Thoth Melchizedek when he wages war against the wicked. James 5 and 4. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of Lord of Sabaoth. Who has been controlling the employment, the economy, and does all the hiring and firing at the highest levels? The Gentiles. Who reaps from all the resources of the land? The Gentiles. Who committed religious fraud, giving the people a false white Jesus? The Gentiles. Who has committed social fraud, having Jacob, the people of color, living in housing projects on their own land? The Gentiles. Who has passed laws to allow police officers to murder Jacob without a consequence? The Gentiles. Who has stripped Jacob of all his rights to freely use all the resources of his own land, preventing him from obtaining his economic independence? The Gentile. Who gave Jacob the throwaways of the refused food to eat at a detriment to his health, giving him diabetes, high blood pressure, because he is no longer in control of the production of his own food? And to make sure he stays off balance, you lace every square block in his neighborhood or housing project with a liquor store. Who released the drugs in the neighborhood? Those of us who live in those neighborhoods, we know there is a connect to a connect to a connect, and the main connect is never the face of a Negro. And we all know most of them in the projects or the inner cities didn't have passports to be able to leave the country and bring in these drugs in the 80s and 90s. I'll take it a little further. Many people of color at that point in time never even left the state in which they were born. So who's bringing in the guns and the drugs? Who sent every other nation in the world into Jacob, the people of color's neighborhood, to leech off whatever resources they had circulating in their own neighborhoods? Middle Eastern grocery stores, Chinese restaurant, Korean fruits and veggies, Indian gas station, Chinese beauty supply. And they all take our money and disrespect while they leech off our resources. If it's sports, the Jew-ish agent robs the ball player. If it's music, the Jew-ish lawyer robs the rapper. Then you say everyone else can do it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But when Jacob does just that, you get envious and you burn down his buildings like Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. Cherokee, Seminole, Blackfoot Indian, Hebrew Negroes in Florida with land passed down to them from their ancestors who were here before the European, thriving businesses among themselves. But you wanted the land, so you burnt down the businesses and hung some of the residents. Removing them from the land, you built overpriced communities that the rightful owners can only dream of buying. This is the little talked about massacre in Ocoee, Florida, November 1920, another one of America's dirty secrets. Now when they want to rebuild, they're refused a loan. Who did this? Who did it? Who allowed it? Better yet, who was in power while this was going on, and why was the hand of justice spared? So how can you think that you or your seed will escape the justice of the Lord in the end of a cycle with the return of Michael? All these years when the people of color have suffered from your unjust laws or lawlessness, a system you set up, your judicial system, the cries of the many mothers and fathers fell on deaf ears. You turned your backs. Then the mothers and the fathers, having no choice, had to turn to the Lord, not even knowing his rightful name. We called him Jesus. The name was incorrect, but the plea for help was heartfelt, crying as only a black woman could cry. This time justice did not fall on deaf ears in the house of the Lord, nor did it enter into office of Chesed, the left hand of mercy. It entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth, vengeance and justice. But timing was the key we had to endure. And now that time is done from the year 2020, and by 2025, 2026, your time of rulership is completely gone. You worship your leaders and politicians, but in these last days is every man for himself. There is no leader of this nation. They know the prophecy and are acting accordingly. And you, the regular Caucasian, is oblivious to what is taking place. They didn't tell you you violated land laws and took land which is not yours. They didn't tell you at this time you are to go back to the land allotted to you and your father's generation. And if you intended to stay in America, you would have to cleave to Jacob to survive the justice. Yes, him, the same one you scorned. My father has a hell of a sense of humor. They didn't tell you the tree Japhet from which you came will be used as an emissary to bring you back home. They didn't tell you the government is sending all the riches and assets to Ukraine, all their military equipment, and moving their gold east. They're leaving you to fend for yourself, Gomer, without even offering you the chance, the free will, the option to change. I'm not your enemy. Even the Gentile Caucasian is my brother and sister. And no matter how wicked a man is, he is to be offered a chance to change and supplicate for his deeds or the deeds of his father. Many things you have heralded and revered as your own is not yours. Some of the people whom you worship even more than the Most High God and the Lord. You call them patriots, founding fathers, conquerors, great men of esteem, most of which did not come from your line of people and don't look like you. It is time for truth. But the wise knows down to my own people of color will be in disbelief of this new information. So I'm no fool to think that the Gentile will be in agreement. But I will leave it here for a time when it is needed and when those of you have found humility, the empathy, and humble yourselves to cleave. All the judges of the old world were of Semitic origin, whether good or bad, and their faces were covered up by the wicked. Job 9:24, the earth was given into the hands of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. And I'll leave you with this, Jeremiah 4:7. The lion came up from his thicket, and the destroyer of the Gentile is on his way. He is gone forth from his place to make thy land desolate, and thy cities shall be laid waste without an inhabitant. All praises. I hope they listen.